I'd like to talk about framing the conversation. I'd like to have a conversation about conversations. I'll work by showing you something that as we sometimes go forward technologically, sometimes we advance, sometimes we move forward as a species, we begin to forget the ones and the zeros of certain fundamental growth components. From here to there, things that build us, things that have made us thrive. One of these is the art of having conversations. Let's begin this way. I'll read something to you. The need to frame and center our challenges on a global, local, and personal level by having conversations. On the global horizon, we deal with existence level threats like poverty, hunger, climate change. On the local level, we face more continental and national problems, defending our territories, territorial integrity, encouraging equitable investments, fighting corruption, leadership accountability, reducing government's waste, strengthening weak institutions. On the personal front, our challenges are on the relationships that affect our performance, the things that make us happy, our relationships with our families, friends, colleagues, building teams, bringing up teens, everything in the spectrum of our social life. All these challenges across these levels have one center. They are deeply determined by effective conversations. Let me define what a conversation is. A conversation is a talk between two or more people in which thoughts, feelings, ideas are expressed, questions are asked and answered, information is exchanged, usually to exchange perspectives, viewpoints, foster collaboration, and solve problems with a building relationships, while building relationships and making better mutual decisions. Now, it's a long read, but it's good to just take a look at it from that standpoint. I'll take it again. Two or more people in which thoughts, feelings, ideas are expressed, questions are asked and answered, information is exchanged. Information is exchanged, usually to exchange perspective, viewpoints, foster collaboration, and solve problems with a view of building relationships and making better mutual decisions. So I want to talk about the War of Worlds and history's best kept conversation models. And I would like to take you on a journey through history to 4 places. The first is the Areopagus. Will be taken through time. The window was opened to us by a certain apostle called Saul of Tarsus. In one of his visits to Athens, he walked into a city, and there he found a group of Greeks. These 2 groups did nothing but sit all day discussing new ideas, right? New ideas. And they did this at a place called the Areopagus. This place called Areopagus was also called Mars Hills. It turns out that in the Greek god of war is called Ares. But when the Romans took over, their Greek god or their Roman god equivalent is called Mars. Think about it. They met in Mars temple, or what they call the place of war. And all they did all day was discuss new ideas. The next place is called Camelot. This was AD 590. Historians still don't agree whether this was real or fictional, they're still not centered on it. But what is true is that the concept lives. That there was a king called Arthur. There was a concept of a round table. There were people that were seemingly, or maybe we had a knight with a shining armor. We had King Arthur himself. And then we also had a character called Merlin. And all of them were required with other tribes to sit round the table. Keep this in mind. Camelot, AD 590. We have the coffee shop. This was in the United States as coffee shops started budding. And then we had different people coming to those coffee shops. But it turns out that the coffee shop began with, drinking coffee, but it became the nerve center for all ideas that were born. So people will get there, get a cup of coffee, grab a cup of coffee, and discuss ideas. And these ideas will eventually seep into the way, the culture, the way they lived. And of course, we can't leave out the village square, African history. We don't have dates. But what we do have is the reality that at every point, when decisions were to be made that would cover the polity, will involve going for war, a group will be selected, brought to the town square, brought to the village square. There would be a meeting, there will be discussions, and after that discussion, it will be chosen. Are we going to war? Are we not going to war? Are we meeting the famine? Are we not meeting the famine? It was just customary. In all of this, what is constant is that the destiny of the multitudes or the populace was always at the mercy of the decision of a few. And these few, whatever they decided, will depend on how well they were able to frame their ideas, discuss their ideas, decide based on how they saw the world. An interesting window into this line of thought is Gulliver's Travel. Gulliver's Travel was written by Jonathan Swift in 1726, and it's an amazing story, a satire about a British traveler who goes to different countries, and he meets different worldviews or different people, and he has different reactions. He finds 4 sets of people in Gulliver's Travel. He finds the little-minded Lilliputans. He finds the condescending giant Brobdingnags. He finds the impractical flying odd-eyed Laputas. And as strange as they sound, that's how strange the book is. He finds the utopian intelligent Houyhnhnms. And in all of them, the Lilliputans, he discovers, think too little. The giant Brobdingnags think too little of him. The impractical flying Laputans think nothing at all. And then the utopian intelligent Houyhnhnms think he has not even started. And how does the story end? Gulliver then returns to England, so disgusted with humanity that he avoids his family and buys horses and converses with them instead. This particular story is the eye-opener of what must have happened after years of traveling. It is a parody of the journey of whosoever, whatever country, group of countries, have traversed the world looking to try to make a conversation with others, try to exchange cultures. In Gulliver's Travel, what it shows is that it shows the unsuccessful nature of these travels and shows the pain and frustration that comes when the feedback doesn't get across. Gulliver doesn't sell his idea. Neither does he come back with the true picture of the places he travels. This reminds us of what may have happened during colonialism. Perhaps the idea was not sold properly. Perhaps they did not come back with the true idea of where they went to. But the reality is, what Gulliver gets is frustration. But it's not quite the situation for many. Because when you try to communicate and find out that others are not listening, the two ends of the stick you get is you are either totally frustrated as Gulliver is, or you might decide to coerce, that is, come back stronger. And this is the story of now. The war of worlds, coercion or conversation. Now, what we have is, we have the same powers that have come, just like Gulliver, to different nations in the world to discuss, to sell, to trade, to exchange ideas. highly unsuccessful in their way of interpreting the world. Then now they come back. One group says, let's do that again. But this time, we may have a new face. And we are always faced with the concept of neocolonialism. The fact that the story of our colonialism isn't quite over. And this is why whenever we receive information coming from outside this world, or outside our part of this world, outside the lenses we look at life through, we always take it with a pinch of salt. And the reason is, when the UN was formed in 24th October 1946, the idea was to bring every nation to the table. Once again, we see Camelots. It's a new day. It's after the Second World War. And every country can sit around the table. And it doesn't matter what your weight is, we are going to listen to you. We're going to listen to the fat. We're going to listen to the slim. We're going to listen to the one who has nothing to offer. Just take a seat at the table. The UN is formed. But suddenly, the round table has corners. What are the corners? There's the UN General Assembly. It turns out there's also the UN Security Assembly. It turns out there's the UN Economic Forum. What that means is, I'd like to say something on the table. The question is, how many guns do you have? The next question is, how many bombs do you have? The next question is, how many atomic or nuclear bombs do you have? So as time goes on, it finds out that you may be sitting around the table, but where you're sitting on has corners. One of the imperialistic shades of the SDGs, SDGs will be the Sustainable Development Goals. We have 17 of them, Sustainable Development Goals, powerful drivers of what will change the world. Why do we resist them? Or at best, embrace them only when they bring profit to us? Why is it such a hard thing for this world to change? Well, because it turns out in conversations, it must be framed properly or it will never be received properly. The imperialistic shade is this: if I did not frame your goal with you, then I do not accept your goal as a goal. I see it as another way you want to take something away from me. We must not forget, you did it the first time. So when you bring a goal, I am highly suspicious. The reason is I did not frame that goal with you. It might be important to me, but what matters is if in the line of the conversation, I'm not part of the framer, I am in the position to resist what can even benefit me because that conversation wasn't framed right. Let's look at cancel culture. And this cancel culture was 2010 to 2022. And the idea of cancel culture is if you don't agree with what I call important, then I deplatform you, remove you, or remove your livelihood. The power of that is that I can condemn, if I have the power, anything that doesn't fit my narrative. The danger of that is that I agree with your narrative just so that I live. I don't necessarily agree with you. And then the other danger of that is if I don't agree with your narrative, you have removed me from the planet. You have removed me from existence and you have made me your enemy. And then we have pressure activism. Greta Thunberg turned the world around, and especially the days before the pandemic, moving around and showing what you really need to do to get this world's attention. Students on strike, no going to school until governments do something. Somebody had to shake the table. As it turns out though, because of how the conversation is framed, you get people that either like you or hate you. You hardly have people who sit in the middle. And when framing conversations, it's really about the middle, not the decisions at the left, not the decisions at the right. But the soft spot is that huge middle of people who are willing to say, let's hear this again. So this brings us to something. What are the components of a good conversation? How would we frame it? How would we do it differently? If we traveled around the world and we are the ones to meet the others, how would we frame a conversation? And these things work whether we are the colonialists, or we are the travelers, or we are the parents, or we are the ones who want to build friendships that are lasting. These principles will hold through. First of all, there's communication. And communication will be defined as the process of sharing information, especially when this increases understanding between people or groups. And the key word here is sharing information. In other words, it's not communication if it's one-sided. It's not communication if there is no feedback. It's not communication if it's already framed and I have no way to participate. It's communication if you say, can you hear what I'm saying? And then you all say, we can read you loud and clear. Let's try that. Can you hear what I'm saying? Loud and clear. And then there's civility. That's the second component. Civility is the quality of being polite. And this is partly because of the distance that has happened with how we train or raise up our generations, and also what has happened to civilizations. The more we commit the upbringing of our children to without that paternal home setting that allows us put not just the education of knowledge, but also what is called traditionally home training. What you miss out is civility. When you put social media on this is like putting it on steroids. And that's where you find out that, like in real life, when we wake up, what we were told is start by greeting good morning. And it was impossible for you to exist, especially in an African setting, without greeting all your elders. And by all your elders, we mean all your elders. Anything that breathes, anything that is older than you, let's put it well, anything that is taller than you should be greeted. You don't need to do that when you're online, you see. Somebody makes a comment, you just answer that comment, it goes out. So you see, over time, it becomes natural for you to, in this urban climate, walk past someone without greeting, past an elder without saying hello. Amplify this on social media, and you see that I post something and there's comments. The comments doesn't ask for the permission to comment. So somebody from Jupiter puts their own comment. The civility says, can I say something to you? And then if you approve, you then can say it. Can I talk to you for a moment? And if you approve, you then can say it. Commonality. Commonality is the fact of sharing interests, experiences, or other characteristics with someone or something. Commonality being the base of good conversations is, I'm starting this conversation knowing we may have polarities, but I will never touch polarities as the basis of a conversation. No matter what I want to sell, I'm looking for the commonality. What you and I share together. This is why when leading children, parents may start out having the upper hand, always standing up to their children and speaking down at them. But effective parenting or effective conversations will begin to take place when you learn to level up with them and talk them eyeball to eyeball. The commonality here is that we are of the same height. Commonality will be, you're just like me. I have something that relates with you. And once you find that common ground, we can walk from there to polarities. Then there's confluencing. Confluencing, the place where two rivers flow together and become one large river. A situation in which two things join or come together. And confluencing is beautiful because the aim when working with confluencing is you're not trying to change the other person's view. In fact, what's happening is that you're trying to hear the other person's view. This will work for couples. It will also work for those who are in the company. It's like saying, let me hear your side of the story. Let me hear how you see it. Confluencing means, look at my approach to the subject, but I don't want to impose that on you. Tell me how you see it. It's like saying, this is a sustainable development goal, but tell me how you plan to execute it. Because really, nothing works until I bring my paths, my worldview, my lenses onto the table, bring it to the subject. And then what we have now is not just one river flowing. We have two rivers that have confluenced. We've made a mighty sea. What's interesting is that in recent times, we've been having flooding in this part of the world in areas across the states here. And how do floods come? It's usually because of dams. When something blocks a river that should confluence, the next thing that you have is a flood. And floods are what you call quarrels, what you call resistance, what you call abrasion. It's when you don't let the other fellow's idea flow into yours. And when this is done properly, you have the gift of a good consideration, of a good conversation, something that works when all these elements come together. Is the word consideration. And consideration is behavior that is kind and considers other people's feelings. It means that I may leave that table not convincing you about the position you should take. It means I may leave that table not changing you from your already hard set mindset. But one thing that will happen is that when I leave that table, I will know something more about you, about your position, about why you stand the way you stand. If you put this together, you can find the most difficult positions currently in the world, and you find out that as long as people are open for a conversation, you can confluence ideas, put things together, and just consider the other person's viewpoint. You bring a beautiful finish. I give you a beautiful example. You would never believe that there would come a time when people would doubt whether the earth was round or the earth is flat. You would never believe there will come a time people will stand at polarities concerning obvious science and be skeptical as to the flatness of the earth. Copernicus many years ago was told the earth was flat. He stood up and said, no, it was round. It's round. It's fair. It's round. He was persecuted. It was even repeated. He was killed for giving an alternate viewpoint to what was considered science then. We have come to agreement. We are now in terms with Copernicus. We have agreed it is round. And right there in this century, a group of people believe the earth is flat. What's going to happen to them? Observe. It's the same thing. They are now persecuted, now spoken against because they have an alternate view. Whether the view is right or wrong is not the case. It's that when you have this consideration, you ask, what makes you think that way? Why are you thinking this way? And with confluencing, you can say, well, there's one thing we can agree on, no matter how you look at it. When we look at the earth on a piece of paper, it's always flat. But when we look at it actually, it's round. Reframing the conversation. It's not so much about what you are saying as to why we are saying it, as to whom we are saying it, as to what end we are saying it for. Most importantly, is how we are saying it. I'm Davies. Thank you for listening to my conversation.